All right, we are recording.
Okay, it is 11:31 and it is time for our meeting on language of the advisory committee, correct?
Sure.
Okay. The purpose for public comment segment during a workshop is to enable citizens with issues or concerns regarding the topic of the notice meeting. The chair will not entertain under any circumstance comments derogatory in nature toward any board member, staff member, elected official, or member of the public. And at that, who wants to go first?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's been some correspondence with the Fair Board that I went to the Fair Board's special meeting that was noticed last night. And the Fair Board Vice Chair, Jody Russell, has requested a joint meeting between the Board of County Commissioners and the Fair Board to discuss the campground, which personally I think is a good idea. I have additionally been in touch during this week with our engineering department and requested them to do a parking study of the fairgrounds complex. In addition, based upon the information that was received last night, I have spoken with Jeff Jensen this morning about potential other alternative sites within the fairground property, and he said that he'd be willing to have a joint meeting to discuss that. He brought forward some concerns, which is primarily $500,000 is $500,000, and that is the budget for this project. But I think it's something we should consider and entertain. So, with that being said.
So I would provide a clarification on what Miss Jody sent. She was very clear that the desire of the fairground was that this RV campground go on existing fairground property. She was very clear in saying that the contention within the community regarding using this particular piece of land, she would like the fairground to be removed from. She was very clear that she doesn't want to be involved in this back and forth that's happening. When I look at this particular contentious issue, she was also clear that the application says that the campground goes on fairground property. The discussion here is being motivated by individuals who want to make a decision for the fairground and not actually what this application was for. The grant application was to place the RV campground on the fairground land. There was a decision made, which I have an issue with because this board made a decision resulting from an open meeting that was not duly noticed, and I find it to be inappropriate. My request to the board was to hold an emergency meeting, or you could actually even amend this one, to review decision to not place this campground on this particular piece of land, place it exactly on fairground land, wherever they decide that they want that, and to remove the commissioners from inserting itself in this particular application because it's not in line with what the fairground wanted, it's not in line with what the people wanted, and it is not in line with our our needs of the future. This is not motivated for the best interest of the county. And so if we're not going to make a decision to just follow the current application, then this meeting is to have a discussion on the advisory ballot because that's really the only other option available to the people. I've asked this board, and many people in the public have asked, just make a decision to remove the campground from this particular parcel and allow it to go where the fairground wanted it to. And that has not really been explained why you don't want to do that. It would be less hardship on the entire community.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
I would like to address some comments that were just made. One, the Bonner County Fairgrounds is the property of Bonner County. Two, casting aspersions upon people's motivations can be done all day long. The point where I choose about what I believe is best for Bonner County is motivated by what I believe is best for Bonner County And I do not appreciate allegations anywhere to the contrary, where there may be multiple allegations that are consistently made by multiple people consistently about open meeting violations, which I look forward to bringing in our next business meeting. There has been no determination by the Attorney General in regards to whether an open meeting violation has occurred. Allegations are cheap, but as I have discovered, they've also become pretty consistent amongst a certain body of people. I find that to be unbecoming of this body and a complete misrepresentation of fact. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So my point here is that the application for the campground says to place it on fairground land. The email that you reference clearly states that the fairground would like it to not be part of the contention in the community and follow the recommendation that was put in the application. Any request to do anything other of those two has a different motivation than what was requested by the fairground. So that's not being casting aspersions or being negative, that's actually just fact. The fact is the application says to place it on the fairgrounds. The fact is that what is happening is we're trying to remove it from the existing fairgrounds and place it elsewhere. Those are facts. So if you feel uncomfortable hearing that fact, that is not for me to pass judgment on. My request is that we honor the application because we have not fully vetted what is the negative outcome of even attempting this? What is the true cost of this? That none of that has been discussed, but what we are seeing is the negative impact of this decision based on the community and the fairgrounds. So I don't know what any individual commissioner's intention is. I just know what's happening is not consistent with the application of the grant, the desires of the fairground, or those of the sheriff's office, the courthouse, or of the people of Bonner County that have come before the board. So as a representative of the county, it is my obligation to make sure that I represent, which is to represent what the community is asking and to make sure that I do my due diligence. So I don't mind if you feel offended, that's your choice. But I'm not going to not represent this issue. This board is causing a problem in the community unnecessarily. We're not even at the point, this is a 4-phase project. So what is the worst that happens if we take a step back, we don't draw the whole entire county into this argument, and we just let the project move forward and work with the fairgrounds? You're creating adversarial relationships unnecessarily. That's not bringing a community together. And I will tell you, we can say fairground is county property. It's actually not exactly the way that county property is interpreted because the state has a tie to the fairground when it's the fairground property. And more than that, it is not my property. It is the community's property, which requires me to look at the best use for the community and not insert my own personal opinion on something, but to look at the big picture. Saying it's county property, fine. What does that do for us? It creates adversarial relationships, and nothing will change that. The application for the grant could potentially be at risk from a decision to not follow what was requested when the grant was received.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
No, I'm going to speak.
Yes, Mr.
So
Chairman.
I actually talked to the lady that's over the grant, and she doesn't care where it sits, as long as what the grant was applied for is used, as long as it's on county property and is accessible for the fairgrounds. That is a fact. As long as it's 33, 34 spaces, they don't care where they're at, they don't care how they're arranged, they don't care if they're wet or dry. In order for the grant to be made whole, it has to meet some certain criteria that's outlined in that grant. As far as where it sits, they could care less.
Okay.
And it does have an expiration date, which is they will readily grant a 1-year extension. 2-year extensions they don't like to, but in some unforeseen event, extreme weather that lasts and lasts and lasts, and you don't have the building cycle that you'd expected, they will grant a 2nd year. So what Commissioner Ahmed had mentioned earlier about the meeting with the fairgrounds is basically opening a door for what you just said. And nothing to be gained by the contentions. But whatever it takes to get the project going, if move it to another spot on the fairgrounds, that's fine. I don't care.
Thank
But
you.
let's get it going because it will create revenue for the fairgrounds, which saves every taxpayer $1 or $2 out of their taxes for every dollar that they generate. We as taxpayers don't have to come up with. And so it's a win-win for everybody as to who owns what property, who has right to what property. That's pretty much cut and dry. If it's Bonner County property, it falls under the authority of the Bonner County Commissioners and the Bonner County Commissioners only. And that's the end of that story. So let's get the project going forward and put it in a place that works for everybody and best serves the community and the fairgrounds.
So in order to do that, would you agree to amend Monday's meeting, which is already noticed?
It's not noticed. Monday's not noticed. We'll do it tomorrow. So it can state whatever we would like and any
So-
action item that we would need to put on.
So could we do it as an action item to place the campground, RV campground on current fairground property instead of a discussion of the ballot question? And then we don't have to move forward with ballot language.
I'd probably agree to that.
Can I just say one thing really quickly?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to mention that it might be worth a phone call to Jeff Jensen by one of you guys, because I know that part of the grant is the engineering of the location. And given that it's going to be in a different location, it will have to be re-engineered, and that's probably gonna require spending some money. So I just wanted to mention that.
Madam Clerk, or Mr. Chairman, rather, I spoke with Jeff Jensen this morning. Jeff Jensen is taking his family on a trip for spring break, which I applaud. He said he'd be willing to participate in a joint meeting between the Fair Board and the Board of County Commissioners with schematics so that he could discuss budget, location, all of that, so that we could try to have conversation within the budgetary realities when he came back. I don't think we can do it next week. I don't know that we can coordinate it, and I have no idea. But he said, so that would be the approximately April 10th. I want to say he said he would be back in the area as of April 8th, but the week of, I think April 10th is a Monday.
Okay, so we could do the action, discussion, decision to place the RV campground on existing fairground land decision on Monday, which would keep us in line for meeting any other type of deadline, and then we can move forward with having the discussion with the engineering company and the fair board, notice that to the public, and all come to the table to discuss the reasonable and appropriate placement of the campground on the existing fairground site.
And most likely that would be an evening meeting, as they all
Yeah.
work during the days.
No worries, yeah. I know she did mention that they are very busy right now, so.
Pardon me. If we were to do that, though, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, if I may. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like that meeting to be specifically noticed that if we're going to do that meeting, that the conversation for the initial meeting should be between the Board of County Commissioners, engineers, and by the way, I have also included Spencer Ferguson, who is our Bonner County engineer in this discussion. He's who I have requested to do the parking study, so we actually use science to determine how many parking spots we need for the fairgrounds. So that it is the Board of Commissioners, the Fair Board, and engineering staff, and not the general public until after we have that first initial meeting. Let's have a meeting amongst the stakeholders of that first. I'm not looking for an open forum. I'm looking for Fair Board, Bonner County Commissioners, engineers.
I'm sorry, but
It still has to be
it is an
Yeah.
open
Oh,
meeting.
what I mean is for public comment.
Oh, got it. Okay.
No, yes, the public is, yes, it's an open meeting.
I don't agree to the not having public comment because Fairground uses a lot of services from a lot of members of the public that have valuable information. What is happening is this board is starting to kind of decide what we want to do. For example, looking at the fairground parking, why wouldn't the fair board be looking at that for their desires? And that's part of what that board is struggling with is they are independent. We have to respect their actions as a board. But in this kind of a topic, when you're talking about something that is so important to the community, it is going to be a tough conversation, but because it's tough does not mean that the way in which we get through the meeting is to remove the public's right to speak at an open meeting. And I can't support that idea because that's what we're elected for, is to be able to manage a meeting, to manage that input, and to make sure that we're receiving available input from the community. And there are tons of knowledgeable people in the community that are vested in this topic that may want to speak. It doesn't make it easy, but I can't agree to say no to allowing the public to talk. And I don't think that's what we want to do as a board, just to decide that we'll allow you to talk when it's convenient for us. I think that gives the wrong impression in the community.
Well, being that this would mostly be administrative conversation, then in order for something to actually get accomplished and for it to go smoothly, it would definitely be an open meeting, but there would be no public input at that particular meeting because we're discussing something with the fair board that is under their jurisdiction and our jurisdiction, and then we can present it to the public and have public comment afterwards.
Okay. I think you're saying another meeting is what you're saying after the meeting?
If it's necessary.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ms. Woods?
Jennifer Wood, for the record. I appreciate that because I'm not on the fair board nor the commissioner board, but I do invest a lot of my business into the fairgrounds and use the fairgrounds, and my biggest issue is parking. So I'd love to have my input on that if possible, so.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
yeah, that's a pretty quick study. Fairground doesn't have enough parking. For most events, there's just not enough parking.
No,
No.
there's not.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner, Chairman Bradshaw, I appreciate your flexing on this and reconsidering with the new information that's available. I would like to add that when Commissioner Ahmed mentioned the stakeholders need to be the ones that are there, I'd like to add that the community is one of your greatest stakeholders as the users of that fairgrounds. And so I respect that you don't want our comment during your discussion and deliberations. And you mentioned at the end. So I wonder if you might entertain the idea of allowing public comment at the conclusion of your discussion rather than waiting till another meeting so that you have that information.
We could possibly do that.
Perhaps even after the discussion before you make that final
Yeah,
decision.
because the meeting would be to find out what the fairground's thinking, what best suits their needs, and how do we get to there.
Right.
And so that's all fairground stuff, administrative stuff here on the board. And once we determine that, then we can go forward with whatever. But as you've seen from our Tuesday morning meetings, because of the debauchery and the foolishness that goes on and is allowed to continue, it's hard to get anything done. So if we could refrain from the public comment till we actually find out exactly what they want, what's available, what is possible, what actually will work, then we go forward and then take public comment.
I appreciate
It's just
that.
a way of getting something accomplished.
I appreciate that. Thank you for
Yeah.
that consideration.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. First, the engineering, I would assume is a minimal increase in the fact that you're not dealing with anything major. It's all level ground. I don't think there's any water lines running underneath the ground. We're just talking about physical location within a
Right.
few hundred feet, most likely.
Yeah, and looking at the GIS footprint, in order to reach the requirements of the grant and the number of spots, it would have to be like in 3 different spots that currently is just wooded and just there's no parking available because of the trees and whatnot. And so it is potentially doable, and it would use parts that are not currently being used. And so it would accomplish several things. So he'd just have to look at it, do the measurements, you know, RV spot's gotta be this big, how many of them can you put in that corner? So it's just, some of them, because of location,
When you say
the
trees,
infrastructure like water and power, they may be dry RV spots
Mhm.
where you use your own water and your own generator.
Now,
Just
when you-
depends on how far the money will stretch.
Now, when you say trees, I'm assuming you're talking about the trees that are on the north side of the road.
Maybe like the
southern road.
northeast corner and then kind of the north center.
And so if it was going to be put on the Readiness Center property in that small portion there, I believe that's the same amount of free space, grass space, as there is north of that line up to the road that runs east to west on the south side of the fairground.
Yeah, on a rectangle piece of property where there's nothing existing, you can actually, it's more efficient, okay? Because you can just, but when you're working in an odd shaped corner, things like that, and things that already exist that you have to work around, sometimes you lose a couple of spots, and so you have to put them somewhere else. And you might break it up in like 3 pieces, but you'd reach that 33, 34 spots that's required by the grant. And
So my next question would be, what's the chance that this meeting with the stakeholders determines that there is no feasibility to put it north of the readiness line? Because that seems what you're looking for.
then it'd go back where it would start.
And we missed the opportunity to put it on the ballot.
Just remember, it doesn't all have to be in the same spot.
Yeah.
Now, if it goes on the ballot, yeah, understand. If it goes on the ballot, it's non-advisory, so it doesn't
No,
necessarily.
it's still advisory.
What's that?
It's still advisory if it goes on
Non-binding.
the ballot.
It's non-binding. So you can discount whatever that result is. It's just that there's a political detriment to doing so. But the fact is, you can still get the public's input, and you're not bound to what the public is
Right.
is doing. So
Wouldn't be popular.
it might not be public. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, but
My thought was that if it's on the ballot as a question, there is no harm necessarily in the project.
not a bit.
And so you can accomplish both if you wanted to, but I agree, not putting it on a ballot question can only be resolved by putting it outside of the Readiness Center property. And so if we can't get a commitment that that's what we'll do, then I say the non-binding question is still legitimate. So,
That sounds rational to me, Mr. Chairman. If I understood Mr. Rose correctly, you suggest, I mean, if we look at timelines, I think the grant administrator said something like June. We aren't even gonna have the results until May. So from a very practical perspective, I'm not even certain how we get some of this even started within the existing timelines of the grant. There is a beginning and a middle and an end in order for us to accomplish this project. And there are budgetary constraints. I agree with Mr. Rose.
So what Jody said was it's supposed to be phase 2 of a 4-phase grant to improve the fairgrounds. Phase 2 was initially proposed to expand the campground on the north end of the fairgrounds. It would allow the campground to use part of the property that has trees, the current campground, and the best camping access. It would also allow to keep the south area totally open for parking. So that's what her email said today. And so part of what I think I'm understanding we should do, and the reason I'm saying on Monday is we vote on Monday to put this campground on the RV, but we have, if we're voting at 9 AM on Monday and we don't actually follow through with making that decision, we have the 5 PM to put it on the ballot. So we could agree to the language today and then move forward with putting it on the ballot if they don't agree, if we don't agree.
Yeah.
Because you wanna have a safety net.
Right, and that's what I thought the
Nope.
workshop today was.
Yes,
deciding
no.
that question.
Yep,
Is today a workshop or is it an action item?
There's no action item. It
So-
was
So
designed to
we-
be a discussion, but we do have Monday.
So we cannot make a decision today because that would be in violation of the open meeting law, which I am not prepared to do.
we workshop the language.
Yeah, that'd
and
be
then
popular too.
We workshop the language today is how it was done, and then Monday is the one where you vote on the actual language, and then we submit it to Mike by Monday at 5 PM. That was the instruction that I was given to make it work, so.
Well, I'm gonna ask a question because it will involve something that I've never encountered in the 4+ years I've been here. If we go ahead and look at the language and put it on the ballot and then come to an agreement, can you pull it back off the ballot before?
Oh, there's the man to
Yeah,
ask.
that'd be,
And Mr. Rosedale
But if
enters.
we
Yeah.
put,
So-
if we voted before 5 PM,
right.
Well,
we don't need to put it on the ballot.
Right,
So
but-
we don't have to.
But just in
incur-
case things go awry and we're gonna put it on the ballot, and let's say we put it on the ballot at 5 PM Monday is the
Mhm.
cutoff. And then come to an agreement where it's all on the fairground property, blah, 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 everybody's happy, we all have a donut and coffee and go, that was fun. How difficult it is to pull back off the ballot?
So, never done that. One.
Okay, that's why I don't have the answer.
Yeah, no, so there's two things. One is first, there's a withdrawal date for candidates. That could be the thing. Second of all, I'll just call the Secretary of State right now and I'll come right back and let you know.
Okay,
How about that?
Thank you.
All right.
yeah,
Yeah, I think-
yeah, because that way, that would already be in place if we had to go that way.
Right.
And the deadline wouldn't be an issue anymore. But if, yeah, everything went good, then it's mute at that point.
Right.
It's like, okay, can we take it back off?
I think option number one is where it's gonna probably come down.
Yeah,
With the
so-
withdrawal period for candidates, probably the same date, because that's, how do you say, the date that you finalize the ballot.
So do you want to read some of the proposed language for the ballot?
Sure.
And did you want to say
I
something?
did, thank you again, for bringing this up. What I heard, and tag teaming on what Mr. Rose just brought up, and that is if you guys are able to come to a consensus on Monday that this is gonna move forward, and later, after your meeting that you have with the Fair Board and the Sewell and Associates, conclude that,
Dan, try to make some copies.
that you conclude that the project
Is that
cannot
enough?
move forward.
Thank you.
On the fairgrounds, based on whatever that study demonstrates, and like you say, you're kind of back to square one.
Yeah.
So is it beneficial to go ahead and put it on the ballot, and that way, if that meeting proves to not be as fruitful as planned, then you can then pull it off? So kind of have that as a safety
Right,
backdrop. Is
right,
that what you're
because
thinking?
after 5 o'clock, there is no opportunity to put it on then.
Right,
So if you already have that in place and things don't work out, then it goes on the ballot and we proceed forward from there.
it's also I'm sorry.
And the reason I said that is because if we don't make that deadline and then things do go awry, well, 2 commissioners will be accused of dragging their feet and just postponing it so it couldn't go on the ballot. That will be what is aired out there no matter what. So that just ensures that that doesn't happen.
Agreed. And it's my understanding that Sewell already did a study of, the location that is
Right,
being
but I don't know that a
discussed.
parking lot study,
Okay.
available parking study
And does
of
that
what their
relate
needs are
directly to the
actually are.
campground?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to know, so last night at the meeting, when I was asking beforehand, I didn't know how many cars we need to park. I mean, if there's that big strip right in front of, so right now, it's considered to be on Bonner County property, just to the south. That's where we have it designed, the contentious area. We'll call it the contentious area. That strip in front of there, essentially from the playground to the west, is parking that gets consumed. And if we filled out with campground, then have we cut off parking for the fairground? So we've solved one dilemma and created another. That's why I asked our engineer, Mr. Ferguson, because I'm not an engineer, how many parking spots do we need for some of these events that have thousands of people? So for example, the rodeo has 2,400 people, but not everybody drives in one car. Well, how many spots do you need for however many cars are associated with 2,400 people? And then Ren Fair over a couple days is almost 10,000. Well, how many people are in a car? How many spots do you need for that? And then in addition, for the rodeo, how many horse trailers are there? How many bunny trailers? And then last night they were talking about the blow-up slides. So 43 acres seems like a lot of parking when you start, but then when you start looking at drive and pedestrian and activities and lions and tigers and bears, oh my, all of a sudden we've got a lot less room to safely park cars. And that, in every decision I think that we have to make as a board, how do we preserve the safety of our citizens, young, middle-aged, and old alike, as we're designing traffic flows, and not just for today.
Easy on that old part.
I was referencing myself, Mr. Chairman. And for the future, we've got to have safe parking.
And Commissioner, I respect that. I just wonder why all of a sudden that's being brought to the forefront. I haven't heard in any of the fair board meetings anybody request that. And all of a sudden now we're to this point where the fairgrounds is again on the forefront. And then you announced at the meeting last night that you've requested this parking lot study. Unless I've missed something behind closed doors, the fairgrounds, to my knowledge, has not said we need a parking lot study for our campground, because the campground itself is not gonna bring in more than, say, 34 more vehicles and trailers itself. That doesn't impact the overall parking along with the events of the fairgrounds.
No, but the 3 acres that it's going to encompass certainly has an impact upon where you can park cars. And as for why I'm bringing it forward now in regards to doing a parking study, well, this is only, let me see, what's today? I've been in office almost 3 months now, and I've been involved in this and a variety of other projects because the county has an obligation, and the fairgrounds is truly a superbly odd creature of Idaho statute. And when I started asking about audits in regards to the fairgrounds, which is owned by Bonner County, but operated by the Fair Board, some of the conversations I found to be odd. I'll frame it in that manner. And as for why there has not been a parking audit done, I can't answer that. But I'm not looking backwards. I'm looking at the present and forward. And I'm not going to create another problem that we have to address, and then we got to come up with more property. We got to be thoughtful.
As Commissioner, Jennifer Wood for the record, as Commissioner Williams had mentioned, though, that the Fair Board had been wanting that north end of the fairground. And they did mention that last night specifically because they want to keep parking open for events and the fair and everything else. So it was in that equation to have it north, so they weren't taking up any parking spot.
I agree.
I think she's talking about the idea of engaging a parking lot study, and I think this comes down to this board is not the fair board, and that's part of how we got into this is the board just became official. They are an official board. They've signed their memorandum of agreement, and this board needs to respect those lines and let them communicate, and that's what's missing here. So it may be very well that we do need to consider something like that, but we are missing someone from the table.
So the
Sheriff
Fair
Wheeler.
Board should have asked for a study.
Mr. Chairman, I just make an observation. I've only been here 25 years, so I'm kind of a newcomer. I guess I've been
Both
long
folks.
enough to have an opinion. but from my observation of going, we've never had enough parking.
Mhm.
We never will have enough parking. So I'm not sure why we even need a study, because when we have a fair going in the rodeo, they're parking at the LDS church and they're filling up the sheriff's office.
That's true.
So
Good point.
if we had a fair study at the courthouse, it would show that we don't have enough parking. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
at awe why we even need a study.
25 years ago, we had plenty of
Yeah,
parking, but
so-
fortunately, our fair has got more popular and grown. Unfortunately, the size of the lot hadn't.
I'm just gonna intervene as the clerk. I know that this is a good topic, but the advertised reason for this meeting is ballot language, so I think we better
Oh.
veer
Oh,
back to
workshop.
that.
Maybe you should grab his answer real quick.
Oh,
He'll-
Mike.
Mike.
His phone
I got a
rang.
second opinion from another person, the secretary says, I'm gonna
Okay.
clarify.
All right.
Oh. So,
All right, so do you want to present yours, and then I think Sheriff has a different one? Or what do you want to do? Do you want me to read it?
So, I put together 3 questions there. 2 of them, the top one and the bottom one, I think, first I wanted to be factual in the question, so I don't want to have anything there that's not factual. And as far as I can tell, I have not heard yet from Mr. Dorman on his input, but all the other constitutional officers have said that they are in support of this question in its generality, and we're not knowing what's been worked out yet. So if you didn't want to use the other constitutional officers in the makeup of the question, I think the second one is the most middle of the road, straightforward, non-complicated, factual question of the 3.
And so I agreed, because I don't, I think that it's more to the point, instead of providing extra information that can be, seem a little bit controversial, even though it is factual, because we're trying to just present a case. So the question that he has is, should Bonner County keep the construction of a recreational vehicle campground within the current fairground property boundaries as proposed in the 2022 grant application to Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation and in all public hearings leading up to the grant application submission? So that's that question. That's of your 3, that's the one that I would prefer of those 3 options. Any comments?
So I heard from Phil McGrain said that the deadline to submit is the deadline to withdraw on a question like that. So the die is
So-
cast at 5 o'clock on
Oh.
Monday,
Okay,
so to speak,
thank you.
for epicness.
Yeah, okay.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add, if the campground were all gonna be on the southwest end of the fairground lot, and it was 3 acres, I'm assuming the the Readiness Center property along that roadside is more than 3 acres. It's kind of like a U-shaped piece of
Yeah.
lot, and the one in the middle, I'm not sure if it's used for anything, but my guess would be if you did construction, at some point in the future, everybody would be forced to park down on that lower corner so they could do construction. So it would make perfect sense that even in the end, after construction, that might be the parking area. And so it makes, how do you say, you wouldn't be losing any parking property if we parked everybody that was gonna park on the other 3 acres that's now occupied by RVs on that Readiness Center property. And I think you probably have more than 3 acres that strictly just used for parking, isn't gonna harm the property and would accommodate all the parking needs without a study. I don't think you need a study to figure that one out. So, just a thought.
That's pretty good coming from you, Dan.
Just a thought. Do you know what the acreage is on that south end there, that corner?
No. It's a 15.1 acre parcel of the Readiness Center.
Yeah, it was things like 10 to 15, something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
then the Juvenile Detention Center has 3 or 4, and then the city stole an acre going through to put in that road. Approximately 20 acres.
The campground is approximately 3-ish.
Well,
Acres.
that is county property. So if you're doing a parking study for county property, that's the one that would apply to the county because they own it. The other stuff is the fairgrounds.
And that's why I'm doing it for the fairgrounds, Mr. Rose.
So
is
you're doing a
because that's-
fairground study, that's gonna tell you one thing, but you can accommodate the rest of that through the Readiness Center parking area, which is the county's.
It's all the counties.
Mr. Rosedale.
Let me add to that, so just to clarify, because it may not have been perceived, all your options. So 5 o'clock Monday is the deadline to yank it. You could tell me ahead of time, like today or tomorrow, well, next business meeting, whatever, on Monday morning, you could say, we want the ballot, we want this language on the ballot. As long as by 5 o'clock, 2 out of 3 of you sign a letter saying you want it yanked. I'd have to have that yanking letter, the removal of it by 5 o'clock. But you could start by saying yes, just as a safety thing, and then by 5 o'clock, say let it go. So you have that option.
And I think the way this would work is we can vote before 5 o'clock, so we would either submit it or not. Given what,
Right.
given
Right,
what
we
your
give you the
information
go-ahead
was, yeah.
or the no-ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any questions on his 3 proposals, 1, 2, or 3?
Was there any other language proposals?
There was, I wasn't
Sheriff
sure.
Taylor.
Yeah, mine was, 2 points to this would be background and question, because I think it's important. Background would be, in 1961, 43 acres of land was purchased by Bonner County for the intended purpose of developing the fairgrounds. In 1990, 20 acres of land was purchased by Bonner County for the intended purpose of developing the criminal justice complex. Question: should Bonner County keep the construction of a recreational vehicle park within the property boundaries of the fairgrounds as proposed in the Bonner County Fairground Extension Grant application to Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation?
Could you submit that to the clerk, Mr. Sheriff, so that we could have that to look at and consider, please?
Yeah,
Thank you. Or email it to
I will.
Jesse, or
Do you wanna just send it to me?
I just
would be
emailed.
great. That way we can look at them and,
Can I just forward?
oh, convenient.
Is there
Nothing controversial about that, it's just fact.
It's a perspective.
any other?
Well, I believe that we are allowed to, I have other community members who have contacted me that said they knew this workshop was happening, and they said that they would talk about language, and the decision is for Monday, so I think I look forward to seeing what the conversation will be on Monday as we move forward.
Okey-dokey.
So the only thing on sheriff's thing that I would, add was on the existing, use the word existing in front of boundaries. You said within the property boundaries of the fairgrounds, because I think on yours, Rose made a point of saying current, something that says what it is currently, not, because if you were to redefine the land and then say we're going to call that piece fairground land, and then you would still meet the requirement of that unless you said current or existing for this period of time. Any,
Well, if I may speak, Mr. Chairman, the fact was that there's 43 acres purchased by Bonner County for the fairgrounds, which is platted 43 acres. And mine says is that we keep the construction of recreational park within the property boundaries of the fairgrounds.
I know, but if we
Which-
did a boundary line adjustment today, and then I built the RV park on the
Oh,
spot we're
within the
talking
current
about,
boundary.
it would be on the
that makes
fairground.
sense.
So I'm giving it the,
So I would add current, within the current boundaries, that's correct.
okay.
All right. Any other proposed language at the moment?
So we'll present sheriff's question, and then are you good with question 2 to vote on Monday?
We'll see what else comes
And
forward.
then,
I'm good with sheriff's on mine.
okay, and then, so we should have two options on the meeting notice for Monday. It should be one to adopt a language for the ballot, and then one that says we just vote to place it on existing fairground, so that we can vote on both options. So we'll
Or-
have 2 action items.
Or any other that comes forward that makes it by the noticing deadline.
So that meeting is noticed for 3 o'clock, and what I can do is just take all the language and copy and paste it into one document. Do you want me to state who they're from, or does it really matter? I mean, I don't think it matters. So
No.
what I'll do is just copy and paste all the proposed ballot questions from you guys if we receive any more, and then everybody can take a look at what's been put out there on Monday.
Since the meeting hasn't been scheduled, can we change the time to earlier in the day so we don't cut it too
It's-
close to
it's
5 p.m.?
Been scheduled, and let me just look, so.
Oh, I thought you said it didn't get noticed.
It hasn't been noticed yet, because it's next week.
Okay.
So,
do we have time to adjust the time to bring it farther up in the day?
Luke, is there going to be an elected officials meeting at 9 AM on Monday?
No.
That was one that, okay, so we can move it to 9,
Will that
if that
work?
works.
Because then we could know what we need to do by the end, before we get too close to 5. I think that'd be good.
So 9 AM on Monday morning,
Yeah.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, we came to present and we put our names on stuff. I don't know if something got submitted with no name on it, I mean, you know my agenda is coming from the central committee. Sheriff's agenda is obviously the sheriff's.
If there's an additional, I can put their names on it, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, it'll be work.
I just think it would be appropriate because it's
Okay.
public business, and
Okay.
if someone wants to offer it, then I think they should stand behind it with their name.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Good to
That way there's
go.
no hidden agendas anywhere and stuff.
Oh, that'd be lovely
Thank
if
you.
there were no hidden agendas. Yeah.
All right, are we all good?
I think we're in forward go.
Is there anything else from the members of the public in regards to this topic?
Thank you for a business meeting.
Workshop,
A business.
business workshop.
Well, if I may, you might want to get in touch with the, what do you call it?
The Daily Wannabe?
One it could be or whatever.
Yeah, could have been.
Because they already telling us that it's headed to a vote. Saw that on the front page.
Well, that's what was,
Yeah.
You made another front page headline.
Yeah, the fact that I'm gonna respond to the Daily Bee is probably
So I have a
happen
media
right after I
distribution
have a
list that goes out on
hysterectomy.
Fridays. So I can just add that particular notice into that distribution to the media on Friday morning.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they're fully informed, I guess.
And what they print
They
is
might have
their
stepped ahead of it, I'm not
responsibility,
sure.
not mine.
Okay, just kind of, you probably already saw it.
But it was a nice talk.
Huh?
It was a nice talk. Yeah. Hey, made the front page and I wasn't dead, so it's a good deal.
That's a good perspective.
Second reference today, be careful.
Are we ready? Can we adjourn?
That day will come sooner or later. So, if there's nothing else, it is 19 minutes after 12 o'clock, and we will adjourn this meeting.
Just a reminder, the building's
Nice.
closed this afternoon, 2:30 to 5, or 2:30 to 5, 2:30 to 5.
Nice, functional, calm.
The employee,
Thank you.
the employee
Mhm.
thing.
Thank you for the time.
You guys have a very, you have a very nice group.
Thank you, thank you. And I'll get you that extra.
Yeah, do.
Yeah, I'm gonna be here tomorrow.
Oh.
I had something else I wanted to add about